approved. And one of the projects that came to us, and this is the beauty of the low code platform. We had 16 days to create a tool for InBev, the beer company. A very complex approval, multi-stage, that routes based on media, based on amounts of money, other criteria, and goes all the way up to the VP. And again, such a project to create and test and go live in 16 days using code, I would think would probably be impossible. And guys, correct me, all you C# developers. We sat with the BA that came out from the New York office, and within 16 days, we hammered the tool. It was up, it was live and functioning. It still works until this very day beautifully. And this is the power of low code and development. It really got me thinking. First of all, not only the amazing things you can do in such a short amount of time, but for me personally, creating those solutions, it was something like I became now what we call it, power addicts. You guys not familiar with the term, and it became really, really something I became passionate about. From the media organization, I moved to Aviva Insurance. Aviva Insurance, I came sort of in the right time when the company was going to digital transformation. So really, they had like, let's say 5 years ago, they were still on Windows 95 and like Office 2007 or whatever versions that were before. They really didn't put any money in technology until they realized they were lagging behind everyone in the market. And they just kind of decided, let's push everything. And even the SharePoint platform was hosted out of the UK because it's a British company. And we had a very intermediate sort of a line, and just to get up and running before you can even develop something, we had to like create a solid line, solid collection. And then the whole digital transformation part started. And we started creating sites for our clients. They were like large department, like the underwriters, or I don't know if you guys see my screen. So back in the day, before SPFX, we used to use a lot of bootstrapping code and CSS just to create nice visual pages that did not look like SharePoint. Because as some of you know, SharePoint does not have the best reputation. And now that it's moving slowly into Microsoft Teams, Teams itself does not look all that appealing. And by the way, that leads me a question. All the SPFX development that is done for SharePoint, is this transferable to Teams? Anyone knows?
I'm going to take a guess here and say that, I mean, what they're doing for Teams now is moving over to the Project Oakdale. And so when you do PCF controls, which is your custom sort of controls, that's actually done not through the same technology. So I just think it matters how you're accessing it.
So so again, all the investment people made in SPFX is that's basically going to go away.
No, you would still go to this site inside Teams and still utilize it, but it's not going to be through like your App Studio or through
no.
Power Apps Canvas.
So, as I was saying, so at Aviva, we had a lot of projects. So not only automation and approval projects, but a lot of projects that even before the Power Platform, and again, we're using SharePoint Designer or just the InfoPath, but it was utilizing the idea of all Microsoft tools come together and creating those applications that are part of the true digital transformation. And when we say digital transformation, essentially what we mean is change. That's at least 100% what the end user, when you come to an organization and you say digital transformation, first thing people, they don't understand, and then they become fearful. I had clients that I was working with ask me, so once you do this digital transformation, is my job going to move to Kenya? Like, how? Why? So there's this big fear of the word transformation and automation, especially now, this day and age. And our job as consultants is not only to take a piece of paper and digitize it. Here you had a form, now it's bits and bytes. Because really, if you had a flowed process, displaying that on a screen doesn't solve the issue. So what we do as consultants, it's not only transform everything to digital format, but we take a deep dive into the entire process and analyze where that process can be improved using technology. And this is where we add value. And sometimes the process gets a little longer, sometimes it gets a little shorter, but what it does is provide a solution for the client, because that's the reason they come to you. I mean, they just, a lot of them will be even fine with working with a pen and paper until you show them the advantages. And a lot of it is basically hand-holding. It's mentoring and instructing, creating a proof of concept, and really understanding their work. And people tend to tell you only their part of the process. And when we create a solution, it's important to get a holistic picture, where it starts and where is the last person that touches it, or where does it end? Not where my part of the process ends. And basically mapping out the whole process and getting a full picture. And this is where you can get like sort of a real value, and you can show your value to the organization. And the best part, obviously, about digital transformation is that you get the data. Once you have the data, and the data can be analyzed, Power BI, or at Aviva, they use the ClickView. Anyone familiar with ClickView?
Yeah, I've used it before, ClickView Desktop.
Yeah. And again, so once you get the data and you analyze the data, then you get real digital transformation, because now you can improve the process, you can optimize the operation. Now you have real transformation, and you not only empower your employees, you also empower and you engage your own customers. So one of the things we tried as a proof of concept that really took off was demand trackers. So any large organization has, how many calls would you say? Like Aviva, only in Toronto, in our office, we were about 2,000 to 3,000 phone calls a day from brokers, not from customers, just brokers calling for support. So we decided one day, hey, why are so many people calling us every day? What's the problem? So we created those tools, so when the operator would call, they would log in the information quickly. And within 6 months, we had an enormous amount of information. We created dashboards, we cleaned the data, and you could have pinpointed to one single broker who'll be calling 8 times a day. I don't know why, but data doesn't lie. And based on that, they started providing training. They could see the pain points. Where's the issues? Why are people struggling so much with other platforms that Aviva provides them? And within the first quarter alone, I think we reduced the amount of calls by 3%. And this is really where the value comes. And for management, from the customer point of view, for everyone. And even internally, we had large projects that were for the underwriters. So every underwriter had, for example, authority, a level of authority they can write insurance, either car or property, commercial. And what they would do is they basically print out 5-6 different pages from a Word document. You would sign it, and it goes back into your drawer. Didn't help anyone who needed insurance or to find the right person. And they had to go through 700 underwriters, and then that by itself took 6 months just to finish the whole process. And then they had to start it over again every year. Again, we digitized it, we automated. People would load their authority, they would get to acknowledge, and the best part, everybody got to see it. So when somebody needed an underwriter, they can write commercial insurance for the mining industry in Canada with $5 million and more, they knew who to go to. Because otherwise, he's just calling 700 people hoping to find someone. Where you can just simply search or sort a list and find everyone you need. Especially in large organizations, you have a lot of those needs. There's a lot of constraint. There's a lot of budget constraints, and the low code automation really allows you to create a lot of those in between applications. If you guys know, they're not small, but they're not massive enterprise applications, and relatively small amount of time. They don't take a lot of people to develop. Some of them, someone mentioned you can develop it yourself as a what do you call it, a citizen developer. And yeah, you can join the team or whatever. What do you call it in an organization? Shadow IT. You can become your own shadow IT if you want to, even though the IT teams don't really like that. So the Power Platform, it consists of the Power Apps, which is the let's say the replacement of InfoPath if anyone worked with InfoPath, but obviously it's so much more because there's so many connectors nowadays. And when I see where that application is now, where comparing to where it was a couple of years ago, where it was barely making it as a business solution, to what it is now, which is incredible, and it's moving lightning speed, and so many connections are coming in, and you can integrate it with almost anything now, not only within Microsoft, but with so many other tools. And the best part is that you can create mobile apps now as well. I don't know if anyone developed any mobile apps. I'll touch on one. I'll just show one of the new concepts that came from Power Apps, because now they released a couple of new things. Cognitive, I'll touch on one of those. I'll show you an example very soon. And Microsoft Flow, or Power Automate is known, that allows you to easily create and automate multi-stage workflows and approval across a whole variety of applications and services. Workflows can be used to improve efficiency, their productivity, whole variety of business functions, and automate repetitive steps. One of the best usages I like is that not only collecting the data, but that there is an audit. Many times in many applications that are created, there's a need to know who approved what and when, especially if you work in a public company and there's money involved. If somebody approved something and it's a public company, somebody needs to know where the money went. And in the old days, they would hire a bunch of consultants from KPMG or Deloitte, and they would come in and set up a little mini office in the boardroom, and they would just start going through every email that was sent. And they would compile, oh, for this purchase or this campaign, this is who approved it, and so and so. All of it is now available in a mouse click. You just expand and you can see who approves what and when. I mean, think about the value you provide an organization. Instead of having to, how much money is that? I remember those accountants that would come in for like 3 months, and they would be there, like several of them at like $120 an hour minimum. You don't need those anymore. So of course, once an organization gets a wind of that can save money, you guys get more and more and more projects. So that's what was going on at Aviva. We had a real backlog. I mean, almost everyone wanted a piece of the action. Not only the demand trackers and even stuff that you would think that a large organization would have, but they wouldn't. Like, for example, they came, well, oh, we have large losses, anything over $50,000, and everything goes into some database, and they don't know where it is. We would like our people, so basically when something like this happens, they would just fill in this form or something, and it gets collected. And again, all got collected, and then we display the data using Power Analytics. Again, there was using Qlik, and then you can see what type of businesses. You can see a map in front of you what is risky. So the organization can see in what lines of business most of the losses occurs. And think about what value it adds to the organization, having the visibility of what's going on. So all those tools, the data intake, the flow behind it, and the data analysis, all of those are integrated. And even if you don't use the Power Platform tools, the idea doesn't change. You collect the data, you automate a process if you need to, you improve on it, you find your flaws, or you streamline a process, and using data, you analyze it, and you improve on that process, because now you can see pinpoints. You might change the way you collect data. Now okay, let's try this. You can pinpoint even the pain areas until you get deep inside your process to figure out everything that's wrong and improve on it. There's also a new virtual agents, and I think Frank can expand on it because this is more got to do with the CRM option and CDS. So actually, Frank, if you want to talk a little bit about CDS, because I was about to give him a little speech over there about CDS, how and what it is, and I don't even know if it's relevant anymore.
No, it's you go ahead and go. I have to leave soon and take care of the dog.
Okay, so again, the Power Apps letting us write data anywhere. You can write into SQL Server, you can write into a SharePoint list, but Microsoft created the CDS, which is the Common Data Services, and I think they just renamed it to something else recently. And it allows you to securely store and manage data that's used by business apps. So data within CDS for apps is stored in entities. So think about an entity as a set of records that used to store data, and sort of like a table within a database. And a lot of them are already pre-made for you, and it includes base standard entities that come with every set and different scenarios, and you can obviously create your own specific entities for your organization, anything you want to customize, and it's easy to secure. It's, I believe, Frank, it's role-based, so you can allow access to whoever you want to view the data.
You have row, you have field, you have hierarchical security, business unit security. You can do security any way you want. That's one of the strengths of CDS. Exactly.
So where if you use a SharePoint list, it's a little harder to secure the data. It's still doable, but it takes a whole lot of, let's say, whatchamajigging behind the screen.
The other thing is CDS is a true relational database where your SharePoint data is not a true relational database. So
yeah, it's correct. So in many cases, what we do in SharePoint, we try to fake a relationship database between lists. Obviously, still use your relation key, but it is not a true database, and it should never be used as a true database. If you ever needed something large that contain a lot of information and security, CDS is absolutely the way to go. The only issue with CDS is the cost. Frank, what is the cost of those licenses? Or was it a P2 license? What is it called?
Yeah, I have no clue what it is this week, but they so CDS is broken out actually into data, log, and files. So there's actually 3 different pricing you have to take into consideration. It actually makes sense coming from the Dynamics world because a lot of people had very large databases and it was storing documents that had come in from email, okay? So the data side is actually the rows inside the tables. And then the files might be attachments that you have in, you know what files are, and the log. So when people looked at the pricing at first, they screamed because it was like $40 a gigabyte, you know, extra. But if you look at it, but the log side was actually much less of a cost. So it's actually not that bad. You just have to plan for it, but realize there's 3 different buckets that you have to deal with, but it does make sense.
Thank you, Frank. So I think the first project I've landed sort of post InfoPath and SharePoint Designer, which are, by the way, are they going away on the online platform? I believe beginning of November. The 2010 stopped working in August, and the 2013 is being retired in a couple of weeks. So if your organization has been migrated to the cloud, your workflows will stop working. I think existing data won't be touched, but anything new any new records, those workflows, the SharePoint Designer workflows will stop working for you. And oddly enough, we got a request from a client in Germany who wanted us to create a project in InfoPath and SharePoint Designer. And we were like, really? And we just kind of explained to them what's going on, and we're still waiting for an answer. Because I really didn't want to take an organization back. It's like migrating from, instead of moving from Windows 7 to Windows 10, it's moving from Windows 7 to Windows 95. That's what it felt like. I'm like, you guys, by the time we've done the project, those workflows are going to be obsolete. So one of the projects that we got was, and I'm not showing everything here because it was large in that it was for long-term care facilities. So long-term care facilities, those are not only nurses and doctors, but there's a lot of support staff and PSWs that need a lot of time off, not just vacations, but personal leaves. There's a whole section about overtime and shift exchange and union stuff that's going on. And they all had to come to an office. That's even before COVID. Everyone had to request one of those absence requests. They would come to an office. They would have to fill a form that was then copied with a carbon copy paper, and complete nightmare. So this tool that was, and again, this is mobile now, so you can use it from your phone anywhere. You can request personal leave. Again, this is a very, very basic application. One of the things I like to put in forms control, so basically I like to hide the submit button. No, I'm not sure how to get the screen that's in my way. So for example, if I select a date, and the absence request is taking place no matter what I do, it maximizes my screen. So for example, I can submit a form. Again, there's a lot of things you can put. You can put error that will appear for a reason, and there's tons of form validations taking place inside the Power Apps. Again, it's all formula based. You guys seen? So again, there's a success screen. Again, it's one of the screens that come by default with the application. Is a default screen, and again, filtering. So you have, this is what everybody familiar with the gallery. So you create a gallery, then you can filter a gallery based on certain status. You can on a pending, on approved, on a decline. You can cancel your own. And again, it's filtering based on a condition. If anybody wants to see the formulas behind it. And again, there's a lot of videos out there that can give you a lot of information. I'm just throwing ideas at you guys. Yeah. So when you click a button, it would set a variable to a certain status. And then the gallery, is filtered on that status, and it just shows you what you just selected. It's easy as that. Again, those are no code required, just formulas. Some of the other tools, I guess, like I can show. So some of them maybe more complicated tools that we are creating. Let's see what's going on here. So this is a little bit of a more complicated tool because it encompasses lots of screens and a lot of variables. One of the things, guys, if I can give you a tip, is try to automate as much data or populate as many fields automatically as humanly possible in a form. Not only clients prefer that, but it removes the possibility of errors, especially when the workflows are running and you have uniform fields and uniform sort of data that you can either filter or act on. But also when you think forward, when you're going to analyze this data, you want to keep it as clean, as uniform as possible. And sometimes when I create an application, you got to think of the data collection part. So if it's going to be you, or if you're working with a team, even start getting ideas of the data that's going to get collected. So by default, no matter what list or whatever database or tool we use, I always will create a field for a month or a year or a quarter that once an item was submitted, the workflow behind the scene will automatically take the month, year, quarter, and populate it. All of this is going to be used later on when the data is going to get analyzed. So just a little tips kind of behind the scene. So for example, for that client, and they really like the idea, and that when they would create an order, how should they populate the data from scratch? So a lot of the scene, we work with what we call a support list. I sometimes call it the matrix. So for example, when we were creating the campaign approval for the for InBev, so they had different lines of beer, of course, comes from different parts of the world, and different people would approve different amounts, and those people always changed. So how would you do that? And nobody wanted to enter the data manually. So and so is going to approve, and so and so. You just want to fill in your form and let the logic do the work. So yes, once you have one administrator that controls sort of the metrics list behind the scene, who approves what, once the flow runs, it automatically queries your support list or your matrix, populates the right information where it needs to go, and does it by itself. So again, try to get as much into the form built in as possible. Tax calculations, whatever you can. So right now, they're actually providing us with an item number. So even the item number is going to be a drop down. So the description, the costs, unit price, all of it is going to come from another support list. So if I put in 111, I'll have to put just the quarter. The unit price, instead of someone's going and looking at the catalog, well, how much is this and how much is that? It will automatically fill this detail for the CSRs. And you can create more and more as you go. Behind the scene, again, once the data is written, you can see the data, you can see how much. Again, and the idea doesn't change. So this is a completely different application. But once again, you can see the status of your orders. You can filter your list based on so many criteria. And you can go back seeing the form. If you notice, I guess the difference between InfoPath was you could have created a really, really long application or a form. You're a little bit limited by the Power Apps because it kind of tries to fit the different types of screen. So one of the ways I walk around is by creating those little menus or tabs. So the tabs, you can filter different amount of information. I have a friend that I'm creating he's a broker and he has a bunch of clients. And so for him, I would have the first screen like a client information, have another tab for car, another for home insurance, travel insurance, if there's a commercial insurance, and you can easily display relevant data by different screens.
Yeah, Albert?
Yeah.
In InfoPath, you know, it was so valuable because we had the concept of rules, and with the rules we can do input validation, input translation, as well as, let's say, cascading drop-downs. Is
You
there
can
an
do
equivalent in, go ahead.
No, you can absolutely do cascading drop-downs. Definitely. And I strongly recommend doing that. As I said before, like as much data that you can populate without mistakes, definitely the way to go.
So you would, you could do input translation, input validation as well.
Absolutely. Rules, you can disable fields based on rules, very similar to what you had in InfoPath.
Nice.
And even more in some respects.
Thank you.
Just want to touch a little bit about the cool stuff that's coming out. So let me go here. I shouldn't have closed that window.
Hello,
As I mentioned before, the number of connectors that you connect your applications is growing by the day. So it's not only the Microsoft platform, but where all the custom connectors. So not only that, you can build your custom connectors to different applications. So for example, if you have a CRM that is, let's say, ConnectWise, some CRMs are specific for, let's say, the IT industry, for MSP. Microsoft does not have a connector, but you can definitely create your own. This is where you can create your Canvas apps. You can create it for a phone. You can create one for the for a desktop or any other mobile device, or mobile devices and laptops. Entities. So this is where you would start creating, working with the CDS. So Microsoft released a bunch of new tools for form processing and prediction, and even robotic process automation. So the robotic process automation part is basically, essentially, it's a recorder. So imagine you have you got an invoice in your email. You would open that invoice, you write what inside, and then you would take it from there, and you would open your QuickBooks, and you start typing who this invoice is from, what's the total, all the information, the tax. You would automatically input that information into QuickBooks, for example. Now, what if you record those steps, like a macro? You record your steps, but every field that you've input, your first name, the client name, the total amount, the tax, you set it as a variable. So far, so good. We have a variable that now we can populate from somewhere else. So let me show you an example. And I actually threatened my wife with it. Let me just go Power Apps. So some of the cognitive services that are coming from Microsoft. So on your mobile, you can scan. I'm going to use maybe an image. And it's actually going through the image, and it populates everything from the receipt for you. Then you can take it and you can submit it. What backend you use, CDS, SharePoint, SQL, any other application that you have, Zoho, there it goes. If you want to see behind the scene a little bit here, so you can, so Microsoft Power Up will automatically detect the fields, and it's quite easy just to set them up. I'll show you in a second. So let's insert. See, it automatically can detect merchant name, phone. I'm just going to go down the whole list so you can see what it grabs for you. In here, so remember the gallery part? So this, in the gallery part, it creates an array of all the items that were inside your in the receipt, and of course tabulates the tax, the total, subtotal, if it existed. Another tool that we created is the same way it reads the receipt. You can train it. You can train it to read a form. So the way it works, you would upload 5 forms. In each form, you're gonna go through a field in a form and say, okay, this is the first name, this is the tax, this is the description, and you're gonna use the same form, but maybe 5 different ways it was completed, and you're basically training the system. After that, once you upload a form, it's going to automatically read it. It's going to read it, and same thing you just saw here, how it grabs those fields. It's going to automatically know which fields is which, and think about it. So as I mentioned before about the robotic process automation, where you recorded your steps and you recorded and you put a variable in where the name will be, where the total amount will be. Now that you grab that name or that value, the actual name, the tax, the total amount from the invoice that comes in, it reads it, it knows what value it is, it can put it inside a SharePoint list and a CDS, and then it's going to kick off a workflow. The workflow is going to start, it knows the values, and it's going to populate the variables from the invoice that you got into QuickBooks for you automatically. You guys understand the power of that? I personally find it really cool, and I've done some proofs of concepts and it looks amazing. It's still not 100%. It still has its quirks. One of the things I noticed when we use those forms is that you need, in the invoice, you need to have strong sort of lines dividing the columns. Otherwise, it doesn't separate the items in the invoice. It thinks it's one giant field. So, but if you use Excel, or most invoices come with a separated information between them, and it just works great. But still not 100%. But they are improving on it. Got any questions so far? Guys, you want me to show a little quick demo, very light demo of Power BI?
Sure.
Also, I want to mention, I know some of you guys are just getting into it. Are you guys all aware that there is that you can get from Microsoft 1 year dev tenant? Anyone tried it? So you can get a 1 year E5 license, which gives you access to everything for about a year. Anyone tried that?
I've been like an 8-year customer, Albert. They're not going to give me anything for free.
Well, it's an E5 license, which is otherwise would be quite costly. And again, 1 year free. And you can create in that tenant, you can create all your tools, and you have access. You can use the CDS. You can create Canvas model, whatever you want. Canvas apps, model-driven apps, portal. Because otherwise, like Frank said, you're giving a client a $400,000 bill.
You know, I think for the small business owners out there, that'd be a great way to entice your customers by saying, hey, you know, I'm going to hook you up with 1 year for free. I know it's a dev license and there may be caveats to it, but any way that you can kind of either save them money or, you know, hook them in from a licensing perspective, you may have a loyal customer for many years. So definitely listen to what Albert's saying with anything that's free or discounted.
It's a great way of proof of concept. When you want to show something to a client, right there. Instead of using that platform, you can come in, show them work you already done. So this is the Power BI desktop. So this is where you sort of create your analytics. It would obviously start from connecting to a data source. I don't know if you guys play with it, but it's pretty the amount of stuff you can connect to just off the get-go. If it doesn't crash. This is behind the scene, by the way. one of my project managers came in and said, you know what, I would like to visualize data to management just to see what we're working on easily instead of putting on Excel sheets that somebody has to go through and figure out. So yeah, you can get your data straight out of Excel, out of PDF. But yeah, MySQL's Teradata connects to Amazon databases, obviously Azure and all the Azure and Microsoft databases, Salesforce, Google Analytics, for those of you who are in advertising, SharePoint list, obviously. Use ODBC connection to connect to SQL, pull some data out of there. The other stuff that honestly I never even heard about. And Zoho. By the way, Zoho, from what I've seen and the reviews, I understand it's a pretty decent and relatively cheap CRM. So once you make a data connection, so this is sort of behind the scene. Looks a lot like Access database. One of the things I did notice, so when you start working with it, you'll notice that the fields, when you input the data, they come as text. It will be a text field. So you do have to go in behind the scene and do some massaging initially. You want to set it, especially if you're doing summing or any mathematical operation on something, it has to be a numeric value because it doesn't know how to act when you put in a text. It can do a summation. It doesn't look at it as a number, it looks at it as like as a word. You go back to your data representation, so each one of those, so in many cases it does the summation for you. If it doesn't, you can write your own formula. Again, same thing as in Power Apps, it has this sort of menu that allows you to sort of autofill. So you would put in, do the, or, you know, count the rows. And then you can put a column name. You would put the list. There's a lot of mathematics. I'm going to show you in a second some of those. But I just want to show you where you would start. So for example, total projects. Something like that, and those ones are, you can see here, you can insert a card. And you can associate a card with any of the values. And over here we have something that's called format. So you can change the background colors. And so on. You can make stuff look really pretty. In here, so we have slicers. And again, you can select what you're going to slice your data based on. So for example, if you do it on status, So other parameters that are being displayed are going to change. Let me show you maybe another project that might have a little bit more value here. So for example, you can put a slicer based on other parameters, and things will change accordingly. Some of the slicers I personally like, I like date slicers, and you can really see how things change year per year or per time period. I think this one specifically was for ticket management. So you can see how many tickets each person created in the organization. And again, it allows you to splice data any which way you want. Once you're done, you would publish this, and it will go to the Power BI section of Microsoft 365. And there's other functionalities. Once you're there, you can create, you can set data refresh, you can assign permissions, who can see what from the online menu. And that's it. So basically what I was hoping, and I hope I got through to you, that all those tools, they're integrated. They're part of the digital transformation, part of the process improvement, and it's continuous. You collect the data, you analyze the data, you improve your process based on the data that you collected. You empower the employees, you engage customers. It's a win-win. And the best part, guys, it comes with a license. You don't have to go outside and get something else. It already comes with Microsoft 365 license. Those tools are there. They're just real great return on investment for any organization. Just break down complex processes, paper processes, legacy systems, whatever is going on in the organization can be broken down and automated, streamlined. Any questions, guys?
Hey, Albert, that was a wonderful presentation. Thank you for that. I just want to follow up on, something Vidya was saying in terms of, doing heavy duty coding with C# and .NET. Oftentimes there's always that fork in the road. Do we do 3-tier application development, or do we do, SharePoint InfoPath? And now, with Power Apps and Power BI and Automate, I think that decision's even tougher. When would you use that kind of full stack development model versus this rapid application development model?
I think sometimes you do have very specific customized needs for an application, and there's try to think of a scenario, but if you gotta go through large amounts of data sets that are all over the place, and you already have custom connections that you created, and a lot of systems got involved, and it's sometimes it's easier to develop the code because you're gonna start developing those APIs to connect different tools all together anyways. But it's becoming more and more like, is it worth going down that route? But yeah, developing .NET applications will never go away. There's still a need for a lot of custom scenarios where this is the only answer.
What about the case where, when you talk about large data sets, maybe a very complex entity relationship, what about the guy who says, well, hey, you could use Dynamics to do that? What about that fork in the road with Dynamics versus, full stack development?
No, absolutely. I mean, well, then as you mean by using the CDS and entities, and yes, this does give you a whole. This is not SharePoint list anymore, right? Where you have different limitations and 5,000 item views. This is absolute database that you can customize, and as Frank mentioned here, you can start using a little bit that net development for different frames, and yeah. I don't see the .NET development going away. This is just a in addition, and it allows you to make those make those decisions which way we go.
Thanks, Albert.
I have a quick question regarding the Power Apps.
Mm-hmm.
So is there any limitation on the number of connections we use in Power Apps?
No, but there's a limitation of amount of data that you can bring. So by default, you can bring up to 500 items.
Okay.
They've extended it to about 2,000. You can make about 2,000 connections, I think, nowadays. If I have an application over here, somewhere in the settings. Oh, I'm not sharing my screen, so 1 second. Where do you share the screen again? For those of us
On the bottom.
there you go. So over here in the settings, as you notice under advanced settings, by default it brings 500 items. You can extend it to 2,000. What if I do 2007? No.
Okay.
There's other ways of going around it with data sets, but again, it becomes a little cumbersome.
Mm-hmm.
And look what it's saying. Hey, if you want to go more, we recommend use common data services to view it. But again, that comes with a different license now. And
Yeah, that's what I noticed. Like it from license point of view as well as cost point of view, when using CDS, it becomes really expensive compared to
yes,
SharePoint, which is like kind of free with the existing license.
correct. So again, I'm saying there are limitations, and that's what I was saying, Silo. So there are some occasions that you do need to go back to your .NET.
Okay, yep, I agree on that. One other question along the Power Apps line is like, is there any option to reuse the code that we are doing? Right now, the app which I'm doing right now is like literally I have to copy paste the code between multiple screens, even though the functionality is the same. Like in C# world, you create a function and you just reuse the function. So
there is something that's called reusable components. So reusable components is, yes, you can use it not only within the application, you can use it within other applications that you create. But when you edit a screen, so sometimes when I want to test something, do I have it open? So you can take a whole screen and duplicate it. Now, mind you, all the names got changed and references changed. So if this was receipt 1, now it's going to be 2 or 3. You can easily copy and paste stuff. And by the way, also in Power Automate, you can copy a section. So if you created so I like to use the cases. So a case is sort of like a parallel action. So you create a parallel action like a switch. So hey, if status equals this, run down that tree. If status equals that, run down that tree. And same thing and believe it or not, that copy function did not exist 14 months ago. So in Power Apps, it was even harder. So in Power Automate, you would have to write all your conditions and if there was an email that needed to get sent and all the variables that go into email from scratch for every condition. So now you can actually copy a whole section and paste and just change the status.
Okay.
And believe it or not, those are relatively new things. So it's a growing application. And when you go to Power Automate, you probably notice that you can do multiple if statements, or if or and just build on. That did not exist, again, 14, 15 months ago. It gave you one GUI if statement, and then you have to go in and write a very, very complex code if you wanted to have 3 or more conditions. It gave you one out of the box, and then you just do your own.
Oh.
So when you're coming into it and now you see, oh, that's easy, it wasn't always that easy.
Got it.
Because again, there's multiple ways that you can submit data. You can submit a form, but you can have different parts. You can create your own little fields in it, and you can use batch
Mm-hmm.
that will allow you to basically get different fields on the form and submit them to different lists in SharePoint or CDS or into different entities.
Okay.
When I started, I was starting to watch. I don't know if you guys know. Started seeing Shane Young.
Yes, I follow his videos. It's really informative.
And I follow him sometimes late at night just to see, because there's always something new that got cool that was released, just to get ideas. Not that I need them every single day, but you just sort of put those weapons in your arsenal. Like one day, you know what, one day I'm going to need it. And it's just going to, I put it in the back of my head, like, you know what, one day I'm going to need it, I'm going to find it. And at least I know it exists and it's doable.
Yes.
But yeah, a lot of times I try to do different formulas to do different things, passing variables. It's not as complex. Obviously, it's not as complex as C#, but it's just a different syntax that you gotta learn.
Yeah. Yep.
And syntax that I reuse, sometimes I go to OneNote, honestly, and I put my if statements or other stuff that I commonly use, especially for cascading menus, because I always struggle with those. And so, you know, I just took the code from one working application, and that's it. I'm just reusing it, because essentially just changed the name of the input field
Okay.
and the formulas. So it's always good to have one really good working application that you always refer to for your code.
Yeah. Trying to get some like that.
Yeah. But as I mentioned before, try to pre-populate as much data as possible into every form. You know, it's not only saving time, but it minimizes the errors when flows are running, because you have specific conditions and the data is uniform. You can just do so much more when you don't have to worry about data not being consistent.
Yeah. Okay.
And again, and you give the user flexibility in controlling what goes on. Because let's say tomorrow some data changed, or the approver changed, or the title of something changed. You don't have to go into your application and start making those changes. It can be done in a list behind the scene, and nothing affects your tool. Let administrators do their job. Your tool keeps running.
Okay. Thank you.
You're welcome. almost time for dinner.
Hey, Albert, I was curious, in SharePoint on-prem, we were literally fixing the airplane while it was flying. There was no dev test prod. We were, we were doing our surgery in prod. Any improvements in the 365 world?
You can create different environments for SharePoint for Power Apps, and you can split. You can still work in an environment, but again, it's just so easy just to fix things on the fly nowadays and make backups. So when I work with a Power App, it's just easy enough to do a save as and keep an older version. And if you don't like it, you can always go back. At least you can do a restore.
Just roll back.
Yeah.
Got it.
But I'm paranoid, especially when I work with Microsoft. So when I work with Microsoft, I always keep and I get to a certain point in my design that I'm comfortable, like I pass a good stage, I will back up my both my flows and my Power App. Just because I'm paranoid from working with Microsoft. Weird stuff happens.
Thank you for that.
Do we have any other questions? Jose, Brent, Vidya, Tino, Maymuna, Louis, or Nagesh?
I'm good. Thank you.
No questions, thank you.
You're welcome.
Well, Albert, thank you very much for your presentation. Everybody, if you visit Toronto, go give Albert a visit. I'm not sure if they're letting in U.S. citizens yet in Canada.
Yeah. I just want to show you a quick example because you were asking about the cascading menus.
Okay, thanks.
Just one last quick example.
While he's pulling that up, we have two sessions tomorrow. One on, one on identity management, and the other one we're doing another 365 session and traveling around the globe to Lagos, Nigeria.
Wow. So, for example, this company they have basically a warehouse where they have trucks coming in, trucks going out. So based on the matrix, again, based on the customer, you can have a different carrier. This way, they avoid making mistakes. Different cities create different options. And there's certain companies that only deal with inbound, certain companies that deal with outbound.
Nice. Is that hitting multiple SharePoint lists in the back end? What's that hitting?
Actually, one list, one or two lists, basically with like a matrix.
Oh, cool.
Would have the under customer, you would have the or sort of under city, you have certain customers, and that's how it just pulls the data. And one of the screens we customize here. A second. So once you create a pickup, you put this little dot, and if there's a little dot in the calendar here, it tells you that there's a pickup or something going on that date. And again, this is the gallery. It knows, it filters by the date. You can modify. You can cancel the pickup, and if you acknowledge, again, just change the status and submit. And then we do a filter. So you have both a search and a filter, right? So set the search, which columns you want to search. Let's say I just want to search a city. if you want to see status or load. So again, it works great. You can bring in 2,000 items. For this specific client, it solves the issue.
Can anybody just state the obvious? This doesn't look SharePoint-y anymore. It's beautiful.
And guys, think about it. And all of those apps are mobile. So approvals. So there's 3 ways you can do approvals. For example, any item that you get, you can set another screen that someone going to SharePoint will create a button, approve or decline. There's the Microsoft approval. I don't know if you have seen it, where you get an email and it takes you to the approval engine where you approve, decline, and you can move and you can add a comment. And the third way, which I really like, is the email with options. Have you seen that part in Power Automate?
Nope.
Yeah.
And it's pretty cool. So it's like an email, but you can add the options. So you select your options, approve or decline, and then the workflow is sort of paused until you make your selection. And then you put the if statement. If declined, do that. If approved, do that.
Nice.
And again, so everything is mobile now. You can quickly create an expense approval. Your manager can approve it from anywhere on their phone. They get it as an email. They can see the details from that you requested. It's really getting, and again, all of those things actually started in Nintex, and Microsoft took that idea. In Nintex, it was called lazy approvals.
Yeah, Microsoft swallowed up a lot of products.
Yeah.
You ever heard of Stream?
So Stream, one of the things that are coming with Stream that's going to be very useful is the ability to share videos outside your organization. So now in Microsoft Teams, when you record a meeting, it's only available to the people within your organization. But a lot of people, they have like let's say shareholder meeting. Not all the shareholders were available. There's sometimes hundreds of thousands of people, right? So once those recordings you can share with the external people, or as I call it, anyone with a link, it's going to be really, really useful. Then it's going to bring a lot of value to the organization. And we do have companies like they're in the financial business and they have their quarterly whatever meetings. And they're like, well, how do I share it with other people now? So that's supposed to come by the end of the year, if you look at the roadmap, but they're always late.
Any other questions for Albert? Well, Albert, looks like we hit it right on the spot with 7 o'clock. Thank you so much. You're a wonderful speaker.
It was my pleasure to talk about myself. Thank you.
Well, Jose, Vidya, Tino, Mayumun, Louis, Nagesh, thank you very much for joining.
Thank you, guys.
I put some links for sessions upcoming. We got Dynamics next week if you want to learn more about that. But yeah, stay safe and let's keep in touch. Take care, guys.
Absolutely. Bye.
Thanks,
Thank you, guys. Bye.